Good day, I'm Chip Reid, and this is Washington Unplugged. I'm sitting in for my esteemed colleague, Bob Schieffer. The venom has been flying this week over whether to investigate the Bush administration's use of harsh interrogation techniques, and we have the perfect guest to talk about that, Dana Perino, who was press secretary in the Bush White House. Dana, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What has been your visceral reaction to this when the president released the memos last week and seemed to suggest that he was opening the door to an investigation? Is this something that President Bush's closest friends and supporters are frustrated or even angry about?
Well, I actually think that what you should look at is the former CIA directors who all said that they were against the move. So last week I was asked about what I thought about the tough decision Barack Obama had made to release the memos. I don't think that was the tough decision. I think that what would have been a tough decision is to do one of two things. Either release them and call for an investigation, or not release them and tell everybody to back off. Instead, what he did was try to split the difference, and so he's made a mess of this whole thing. I think that the Obama administration is completely wrapped around the axle, and my concern is it's not just a communications problem now. I trust the CIA, and I trust General Mike Hayden when they say that the intelligence community will be less likely to do what they need to do in order to protect the country if they think they're going to be prosecuted later.
What do you think is the real motivation here of some of the Democrats on Capitol Hill who are really pushing hard for an investigation? Are they out to get the president and the former president and former vice president?
Well, it's hard for me to think like the Democrats because it's just not really something I've ever been really able to channel. But I do think it's curious that some of the leadership in the Democrats are calling for this. But I think that's one of the reasons you see some people calling for it and some people not, because the members of Congress were briefed. They were briefed about the program. They told the administration to continue because we knew that we needed to get this valuable intelligence. It's very different talking about this today in April 2009 when we've been safe for 8 years. None of us can know what it was like back in those days, and that includes Democratic members of Congress who were briefed on the program and were encouraging of the administration to move forward. So it will be very curious to me if they decide to go forward with the commission, whether they call themselves to the witness stand.
Now, Nancy Pelosi says she was briefed on the fact that there was legal justification for using waterboarding, but she says she was never told that waterboarding was actually used.
Okay, I don't understand how she splits the difference there, but if they want to have a commission and they're going to move forward with this, then I think you got to call her to the witness stand and find out what she knew and when she knew it.
Would you be opposed to having a 9/11 style commission to investigate this?
I do not think we need to investigate this. I think we've kept the country safe. Dennis Blair, the current administration's DNI, also said that this information helped us prevent terrorist attacks. He doesn't know that he said that he didn't know if back then he would have approved it, but what he does know is that it gave us an intelligence stream. It's very curious to me that they took that statement that he said to employees out of the press statement that they gave. And I was just thinking, if the Bush administration had done that, if we had edited somebody's statement to employees and edited that out when we sent it out to the press, we probably would have been fending off calls for a special prosecutor. So there's a lot of double standards going on here. I think we need to realize that we are dealing with a very tough enemy that is very patient, one that wants to attack us again, that we went after these terrorists. We've already said that those techniques aren't being used anymore. So what more is there to investigate unless they're on a political witch hunt? And I'll tell you this, politically, it is not smart for the Democrats to do this. But more importantly,
why is that?
Well, because the American people, I believe, are not going to want a political witch hunt, and they also understand that we have to protect the country from a very brutal enemy. Look, none of us want to talk about interrogation techniques. They're unpleasant for a reason, because you're trying to get intelligence.
Do you believe waterboarding is torture?
I have never answered that question because I don't know what I would have done in that situation if I had to protect thousands of lives.
Well, you're leaving open the possibility that it is, and it may be a violation of law. Shouldn't it be investigated to see if there were violations of law?
Look, I think all of these things are very unpleasant. If I said to you one of the techniques we would use is to try to rip people's fingernails out with pliers, we would probably consider that to be torture as well. I just think that we have to take a step back and realize that this program was effective, safe, and legal. And in addition to that, I trust somebody like General Mike Hayden more than anybody else when he says that they were absolutely critical to protecting the country, and that he thinks that releasing the memos hurts the country.
Do you suspect that President Obama himself would like to have an investigation here and would like to target the former administration and even the president himself?
I think people don't know because he's flip-flopped on this issue several times, and maybe flip-flopped not so in a clear-cut way, but in a way that leaves everybody very confused. And I'll tell you one thing you don't want as a president. You don't want your intelligence community confused or worried that you're not going to stick up for them when push comes to shove. And we need the intelligence community to trust the President of the United States in order to protect all of our safety.
Keeping the focus on the president but shifting topics, 100 days, how do you think he's done? Would you give him a grade?
Oh, I don't know if grades are the right way. I used a baseball metaphor earlier today where I said that I think that they've had some hits, they've had some misses, they've had a few foul balls, and they've hit a couple of home runs. So it's been a mixed bag. 100 days is not really enough to tell you if something is a success or a failure, but it is a legitimate benchmark to look at what kind of tone they are setting, and I think that unfortunately what's happened in the last 10 days is really going to affect them going forward. I don't think that people will even remember some of the things that happened back in January.
Now, his poll number is about where President Bush's were at this time, but the right track, wrong track shows it's a dramatic improvement over the Bush administration. Do you think that's because he's doing things right that President Bush did not?
Well, I think, look, I'm not a pollster, I don't exactly know, but I think if you look back to last fall, our poll numbers were way down. Republicans had been in power for 8 years. That was one thing to expect, that our numbers would be down, but also we were dealing with a major economic crisis. I think people are starting to feel that the economy might have some light at the end of the tunnel here, but I think they're more concerned about the policies because if you look at those numbers, Chip, Barack Obama personally remains very popular, but his policies are not as popular. And so actually, the next 100 days are probably even more important than the first 100 days when it comes to will he be able to get Congress to move forward on these major reforms that he's asking.
And Dana, I've got to ask you this before you go. You had one of the hardest jobs in Washington, daily defending a president who was under siege, and now you actually have a life. What's it like to make that transition?
Oh, it's wonderful. Although, I did defend the president every day, and I did it with pleasure, but I also would defend the press to the president and to his staff. I don't have to do any of that anymore. I'm getting a lot more sleep, and I'm able to be with my husband. And you know what? I'm getting to just tell you what I think, and that's been a really a pleasure for me, and I really thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you, Dana, for being with us.
Okay.
All right. And this is Washington Unplugged on CBSNews.com.